Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, should farmers get grants to grow green fertiliser on land made uneconomic for crops by the impact of war in the Middle East, and sourcing thatching supplies closer to home?
We are all crying out for good quality long straw. My son works for me and the other two chaps, they're all under 30 and I want them to have security.
More on that later. First, this week we're looking at cutting emissions from farming. Methane is a potent greenhouse gas and just under half of the UK's emissions of it come from farming. The main source is cattle and sheep burping it up during digestion. So the race is on to reduce emissions by making livestock feeds more digestible. A £2.2 million DEFRA-funded research project into this problem is taking place at Rothamsted Research, supported by the British On-Farm Innovation Network, or BOFIN. One of the crops being field trialled is a precision-bred barley, developed using gene editing. Gene editing isn't without controversy. It allows scientists to add, remove or alter DNA at specific points in the genome without introducing genetic material from other organisms. As Mary Ward-Lowry reports, the barley has higher levels of fat than usual to increase its nutritional value.
Is that the precision bred stuff that
no,
we can see
there?
there?
No, that's the standard.
Right.
That's the precision bred.
Oh, what, the green?
Yep.
Oh, brilliant.
Green, there you go.
Oh,
good start.
Tom Allen-Stevens from Boffin is relieved to see this precision-bred crop is doing well despite the dry spring. The precision-bred barleys come from the lab of Professor Peter Eastman at Rothamsted.
We've made changes to the barley to make the barley accumulate a little bit more lipid fat in the cells of the plant, and that's both the stem and the leaves and a little bit also in the grain. It has slightly more calories and it's easier to digest. You can achieve a small suppression in methane emissions. It's equivalent to about 4% reduction in methane for every 1% increase in lipid content.
Tom Allen-Stevens.
How many livestock farmers around the country got ryegrass leys? If many of them put it into high lipid ryegrass leys, the potential to reduce emissions are going to be massive. This is new technology, and England is the only place in the country where we can bring it onto commercial farms. It's gene editing technology, and in the rest of Europe it's counted as GM. But exclusively here in England, we've now got this new legislation that where it's been bred that could have happened naturally, that it is treated as conventional. And so this is the very first trial on a commercial farm of seeing whether what Peter's been seeing in the lab actually happens in the field.
So there's an important difference between genetic modification and gene editing or precision breeding, which is what's happening here. Professor Eastman again.
Where you use modern breeding technologies to produce a crop, if the changes you make are equivalent to the changes that could have occurred naturally, then the material is not GM. So it's not about the technology that was used to make the product, it's the fact that the organism is the same as could have been developed using conventional breeding technology.
We aren't naming the farmer for this trial for security reasons, and biosecurity around the real-life cultivation of gene-edited crops is obviously a major concern.
So there was a little bit of concern about making sure that the seed was targeted into the ground. It was only going onto the trial site. We've got a very specific area where the seed is being planted. We've got the trial area, which is about 1.5 hectares, and we've got the standard variety around the outside, which is about 1.5 hectares. And then we've got about 1 metre to 1.5 metres around the inside of the variety. So the two varieties are separated by a bare strip of ground, and then we've got a 2 metre border either side of the field to make sure that we've got nothing straying into following crops or other things.
The barley in this case is not actually going to be flowering. We're going to cut it. There won't actually be any pollen, any seed that is going to set from this crop anyway.
So this is the first cereal to be approved under the Precision Breeding Act that was passed in 2023. And this barley was only approved to be grown on farms about a month ago.
We acted fast and we thought what we really want to find out is whether this does actually work in practice. So we can grow it now. It's cleared by the Advisory Committee on Releases to the Environment that we can grow it on farms, but it has to go through the second stage of that process that it's currently going through with the Food Standards Agency to check that it's okay to feed to livestock. But we're not planning to do any trials on feeding it to livestock this year. Those trials we're planning to do next year. But that's if the current regulations with the SPS arrangements don't completely kibosh that plan.
Oh, that's a possibility, is it?
It could be, yes. So we're currently negotiating with the EU over the sanitary and phytosanitary arrangements for closer alignment to the EU, which is a great thing. The danger, in particular with precision breeding, is that all of the research that is currently now cleared to come out into the field will have to stop.
Tom Allen Stevens there, and we are following those negotiations between the EU and the UK on closer alignment on plant breeding rules and much else. Now, thatched roofs are part of that chocolate box traditional rural view, but thatching is becoming more of a challenge due to issues with some of the materials. Supplies of the right sort of wheat straw can be unpredictable, and Hazel spars, which are used to attach the thatch to the roof, now have to be imported from Eastern Europe. So, to kickstart interest in growing more locally, a summit of thatchers, farmers and plant scientists was held this week in Suffolk. Anna Hill met the organiser, hedge layer Richard Negus, and joined him at a cottage in Bedfordshire being worked on by master thatcher Chris Dodson, who told her about his work.
Just tell me what you were doing there, Chris.
Sharpening the eaves knife.
This is a huge long knife. The handle is about 4 feet long.
This is used for cutting the eaves and the gables. This was actually my granddad's knife, so it's now about 80 years old, and at 46 years old I won't have to worry about getting a new one.
Just tell me where you normally get your straw from. And we're in a straw area, not a reed area, I have to say.
So we have some which comes from Bedfordshire, it's only 20 miles from home. We've got some from Lincolnshire, some from Wiltshire, but the vast majority of thatching straw in this country is grown in Somerset and Devon. For thatching straw, it is about the length. Thatchers on average will want a straw between 1 metre to 1.2 metres. So you've got Huntsman, Widgeon, but you've also got the red wheats such as Red Standard and Squarehead Master. They can be 1.3, 1.4 metres long, so very, very tall.
Nearly as tall as me. Shall we walk round the back and meet the others?
I'm Richard Negus, I'm a hedge layer.
You're holding a summit. Why? What are the problems that you want to address?
I live in and around one of the best wheat growing farm clusters in the country. That's the High Suffolk farm cluster. Why are they not growing thatching straw? And Chris has a need, and then I thought, well, let's try and get some of the country's best wheat growers, some chaps who really know about the science of growing wheat, and Chris, who's a master thatcher, together and see where the similarities are there and where the differences are, and if we can meet in the middle so we'll reach a happy conclusion.
I'm Tom Barker. I work for a plant breeding company called Suffolk. I'm looking at Chris like my customer in the same way that I would look at him like a maltster or a flour miller. He needs a product. What is it that we have in plant science and in plant breeding that we could utilise to help him? The steps that I think you would then talk to farmers about would be planting it probably a little bit later to make the rooting as good as possible. And then also you want the tillering, so the kind of branching out of the plant to be as stiff as possible. Then when you came to harvest the straw, you'd have really good, really clean, hard-wearing straw that then Chris can use for all the purposes he showed us on the roof. Modern science and modern agronomy can actually answer a lot of the solutions of what we may not have been able to do in the past. So I think there's a nice marriage here between traditional and modern.
These hazel spars are basically pieces of hazel which have been cut into points at the end, and then you twist them and bend them round.
Almost made to form a staple. They hold the straw onto the roof. A lot of the spars are imported from Eastern Europe, but it's simply down to the fact that labour costs out there are so much cheaper.
This is another thing that we're looking at, is that if we can improve hazel coppice in this country, then that is another opportunity there. If we brought woodland back into better coppice rotation, then Chris wouldn't also have to struggle to source these as well.
So Chris, how much difference would it make to have local growers growing for you?
It would make a huge difference. We are all crying out for good quality long straw. My son works for me and the other two chaps, they're all under 30 and I want them to have security, and if we can take that pressure away, it will make my life a lot easier, but it will encourage thatching throughout the country and give it a really good long-term footing.
Master Thatcher Chris Dodson there. As we've been reporting over the past few weeks, fuel and fertiliser costs have been rising as British farming is reliant on global markets disrupted by conflict in the Middle East. Well, while the cost of producing a crop is up, the price paid for it hasn't risen by anything like as much. So, looking to the autumn, some farmers may decide not to grow loss-making crops, leaving fields lying fallow. There are calls for the government to fund a one-off scheme to protect this land from soil erosion by planting cover crops, and these could also reduce the use of fertiliser. The idea comes from the Central Association of Agricultural Valuers, the professional body for farm valuers and advisors. Jeremy Moody is its secretary. He told me about the financial pressures arable farmers are facing.
I think for cereals farmers, things are particularly serious. This follows on 3 very difficult years. The latest DEFRA forecast for the year ending in February shows the poorest return on cereals farming since at least 2004. And indeed, if you add up the 3 previous years, they total less than the year before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That suggests very straitened cash flows, possibly limited credit, and people facing really quite hard decisions to make as they approach preparations for the autumn.
Given that, you think there will be quite a lot of fallow land. And what you want to see is this one-off government scheme. How do you imagine it working?
The government needs to move fast on this. They need to make a clean offer of a simple scheme for establishing a mixed cover with legumes available to people to choose from this June so they can factor it in for their September planting.
So what's the aim here? Is it to protect the soil, or is it actually to give an alternative to fertilisers?
It's to help build greater resilience and better quality soils in the country so that they are more resilient in the face of climate change, better able to handle both water and drought, better able to support plant growth where this is needed. That in turn enables possibly less dependence on the extent of artificial fertiliser, and it is taking advantage of the problem to see if we can actually achieve progress on our depleted soils.
So that's a sort of green manure cover crop. The idea is that it protects the soil. But if a farmer wants to do that, why does the government need to get involved?
Because I think that people are so straitened on cash. The government does wish to see parts of the sector move away from more use of artificial fertilisers, and beginning to understand how some of these green manures will work on a larger scale in arable farming begins to answer both problems.
Although I'm sure the government would point out that money is not infinite, and this might not be how they choose to spend it.
No, it's their choice. The question is, how do they spend their money most effectively for their objectives?
We do have the Sustainable Farming Incentive in England, which reopens in June, obviously in a phased way, as we've discussed before on this programme. Might that help?
Not really, because these are people for whom the main window for SFI is going to be in September.
What happens if this doesn't happen?
You continue with an arable sector that is likely to produce significantly less in the harvest of 2027 without necessarily having made the gains that we need to make in soil structure, soil health.
Jeremy Moody from the Central Association of Agricultural Valuers. And that's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Sarah Swadling, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.